Text: A look inside Gateway Arch National Park, the Old Courthouse, Part 1. The ranger stands next to a clear-scale model of a domed courthouse.
Hello, I'm Ranger Carl, and welcome to Gateway Arch National Park. Today, we're visiting an important historic structure here in St. Louis. This is called the Old Courthouse.
Photo of the building's green dome.
The Old Courthouse was last used in 1930 as a courthouse here in St. Louis. Although the building kind of looks like a capitol or a city hall, it never was either of those things. It's always been a courthouse. The Old Courthouse's history includes some very important court cases, which began here in 1847 and in 1872. We'll talk a little more about those court cases a little later on in our presentation this afternoon. Now, the Old Courthouse, as you visit it, you're visiting a building that is Greek Revival architecture in design.
Model of the building's 6 columns.
And when you see a building that has columns and large porches like this is a very popular architectural style in the United States in the middle of the 1800s for public buildings. You might also notice that around the country, many of the state capitals in the United States are also Greek Revival architecture.
Close-up of the model's clear dome.
The dome of the Old Courthouse is a different type of architecture called Italian Renaissance. But the building as you see it today was finished around 1862. But it went through several different transitions and enlargements over the years, and we're going to go learn about those next.
The ranger stands next to a black and white drawing of the original courthouse.
Now, to give you a little brief information and history about St. Louis was founded in the year 1764. In 1803, St. Louis becomes a part of the United States of America with the Louisiana Purchase. In 1821, Missouri is admitted as the 24th state in the Union. And in 1828, St. Louis County would build its very first courthouse here on this very block. Behind me is a drawing of this first courthouse. It was a type of architecture called federal style of architecture. In St. Louis at this time, the county population around 1820 was around 5,000 people. But because St. Louis was such a quickly growing city, we had a lot of immigrants that were moving here from other countries like Germany, Ireland, and Italy. We also had African Americans living here as well. Because when Missouri was admitted as the 24th state, it was admitted as a slave state. So there were slaves and free black people living here in St. Louis as a part of that population as well. That population of 5,000 people in 1820 would rise to about 17,000 in 1830. And by 1840, it would go up to about 77,000 people. So the little building that was built in 1828, unfortunately, we outgrew the space very quickly, and there was a need to build something larger here to replace it.
The ranger stands next to a black and white photo of a half-circular domed courthouse.
Now, at our second stop on the tour this afternoon, we're looking at a photograph here of the Old Courthouse as it would have looked during its second stage of construction. What we're looking at here is the original 1828 courthouse with the tower removed off of the roof, and everything to the right side of this was the new addition onto the building. And that has included the space we're standing in right now, the rotunda. As you can see in the photograph, the first dome on the building was a Greek Revival dome made of wood and covered with a cladding of copper on the outside. What you can't see in the photograph, it's been cropped out on the right side of the photograph, would be the west wing of the building. It would have been here at that time as well. So as you can see, not a very attractive structure for St. Louis, which is calling itself this world-class city. But the reason why it was done this way is because they wanted to save taxpayer money. The original plan was to tear down the 1828 courthouse and replace it with a much larger building. They actually had an architectural design competition where people submitted design ideas for what this new courthouse would look like, and they gave out the prizes, but then St. Louis County decided not to use any of those ideas. They instead decided to just add on to the existing 1828 courthouse to enlarge the building. In our next stop on the tour, we'll take a look at what the building would eventually look like.
Logo, NPS arrowhead, text Gateway Arch National Park, St. Louis, Missouri, 2020.